You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Ballin in the Six podcast, your night source for all NBA news, rumors, season previews, playoff discussions, and in-depth analysis from Chicco Nacion of the Scores basketball division within the heart of the Six, Toronto, Ontario. Here are your hosts, Brandon Caputo and Chicco Nacion.
Hello once again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another installment of our Ballin in the Six podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your September 30th, 2020 edition, your source of North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the good old Niagara region. You can find us on social media for updates, giveaways, and sponsor promo code deals each month by following the podcast on Twitter at Armchair GM Pod, on Facebook by searching Armchair GM's Network, and on Instagram by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. Listen to us on our main platform, which is Spreaker.com, and the free Spreaker app by searching the Armchair GMs. As well, we are on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. And lastly, check out our beautiful user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding our network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. Everything's on there for you guys. Wherever's most convenient for you to listen to us. We're on many different platforms for you. Please give us a like and a subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us right now. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Ballin in the Six podcast, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Capoots13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm always very pleased to be joined by my co-host for the basketball portion of the network, by my good friend Chicco Nacion of the Scores basketball division. You can follow him on Twitter at Chicco_N. Chicco, thanks so much for taking the time to join us for, I know, what has been a very busy week for you covering the NBA.
Yeah, not a problem. Anytime, man.
So having you back on here for the NBA Finals preview, guys. So that's what the main purpose of the show will be today. Get Chico's analysis of the Lakers and Miami Heat series that tip-off is going to be in about 7 hours of us recording this episode. So big start of the NBA Finals tonight. Chico's going to also recap the Western and Eastern Conference matchups, how those played out. And we're going to start off today by talking about some big news in the coaching world of the NBA, Chicco. We had Doc Rivers was relieved of his duties from the Los Angeles Clippers, and pretty big shock there, as obviously he had some pretty strong comments about the what's been going on with the Black Lives Matter movement a little bit over a month ago, and the Clippers, obviously, with their big collapse to the Denver Nuggets in the that led the Clippers to play the Lakers in the Western Conference Final, and the Clippers did not get there, setting up the matchup that everybody wanted, the Lakers and Clippers, Kawhi versus LeBron. Just what were your thoughts on just the Clippers in general and the decision that was made to relieve Doc Rivers of his duties?
Yeah, it was obviously a really disappointing end for the Clippers, and I think a lot of fans would have loved to have seen that all-LA showdown that had been pretty much hyped up since the start of the offseason, when Kawhi Leonard, Paul George decided to both take their talents to the Clippers. So a little disappointing to see that they weren't unable to kind of fulfill their end of the deal. Obviously, they blew a 3-1 lead, but give credit to Denver. I mean, they fought back twice from 3-1 series deficits to make it to the conference final, and they really dug down deep and were able to kind of expose a lot of flaws with the Clippers. But overall, I mean, you look at the talent that they have on paper, they should have won this series, and they should have been able to take care of business. And I do think some of that blame does deserve to be on the head coach, on Doc Rivers. And unfortunately for Doc, he did take the fall for their disappointing finish.
Do you think that there was any validity to the rumors that have been swirling around about Kawhi Leonard and other players kind of forcing this move to be made, or do you think it was just a combination of just not being the right fit and just having another disappointing end to their playoff run?
Yeah, this year is basically a championship bust, championship or bust for them. I know Paul George had said after the game that he didn't look at it that way, but certainly ask anyone else on that roster and pundits across the league, and they'll tell you anything short of a championship would have been pretty disappointing for this team, even though the franchise has never made the conference finals once in their franchise history. But yeah, Doc Rivers, this isn't the first time that the Clippers have come up short. I mean, they had another 3-1 lead with the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Lob City Clippers, and they blew that to Houston. They should have been in the conference finals that year, and they weren't able to take care of business. And overall, during Doc's stint, I believe he only won 3 playoff series, which is quite disappointing considering the talent that this team had, not just now with the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but also with the Lob City Clippers. They had quite some talented teams there that were capable of making a run, and for him to win only 2 playoff series with that group has to fall on Doc at least a little bit. And there were certain points in that conference finals where you did have to question some of the decision making from Doc Rivers, such as playing Montrezl Harrell the amount of minutes that he did when he was clearly a liability on the defensive end and something that the Nuggets were targeting each and every time they went up the floor. Instead of playing, let's say, a defensive-minded center in Ivica Zubac. There were reports that circulated yesterday that Harrell's playing time did factor into the decision of the firing, and the fact that he chose to play a more offensive-minded player who wasn't even in good form, really, because he had been already outside the bubble, unfortunately, due to the death of his family, but he just was never right during his time in the bubble, Montrezl Harrell, and they really need some defense. And Zubac would have brought that for them, but unfortunately, for the Clippers, they didn't go to Zubac as often as they should have.
And now Doc Rivers, he is reported from thescore.com, one of your colleagues over there, posted the article today that the 76ers are to meet with ex-Clippers coach Doc Rivers. So he is already obviously one of the most respected coaches in the NBA. He's obviously going to get a job somewhere else. It looks like the 76ers are to meet with him, and it looks like that job is obviously garnered some interest. Obviously Mike D'Antoni also interviewed for that job, as well as Tyronn Lue. So what do you think about 3 coaches there meeting for the 76ers vacancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely outside the Clippers position. It's probably one of the most highly coveted positions. I mean, you have 2 stars there in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, but I mean, the problem has been trying to find a way for them to both coexist and get the best out of both of those players. And so it's definitely going to be a challenge for them to go in there, but probably not as big as the Clippers challenge, which is to basically win a title next year. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both have player options on their contract for the 3rd season. So if they choose not to exercise that, they could be free agents in that vaunted free agent class next year. And the Clippers gave up all those picks to get Paul George. And things could be looking pretty rough for them if they aren't able to come through next year with the championship.
Yeah, with all the player options available, maybe Kawhi and Paul George might not be there long term. You never know what the future could hold for the Clippers. So they really are in a win now mode, and Doc Rivers was kind of the casualty with that. So that was just some big news that came up last week that I thought was worth discussing in the first segment of the show. But with that being said, guys, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and Chico's going to recap the Western and Eastern Conference Finals matchups and how those ended up playing out. So we'll be right back here on the Ballin' in the 6 podcast and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory, and Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ballin in the Six podcast, right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Chicco Nacion from the Scores Basketball Division back with you here. And Chicco, let's look at the Western and Eastern Conference finals and how those kind of shook out. And first, this shout out goes out to Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, home of the best pizza and wing combos in Niagara Falls. Call today, 905-374-4400 and carmine'spizzeria.ca. This month's promo code is Armchair Bacon for 10% off your entire order when you call for call-ahead pickup or delivery. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, way too good. So we had your picks of that came to fruition that we mentioned in the last episode, which was the Denver Nuggets making it to the Western Conference Finals with the plus 950 odds there. As well on the Eastern side of it, you had Miami, who had a plus 1100 odds on that, Chicco. So if you would have been a betting man, you could have made some money here on the Denver Nuggets and the Miami Heat making it to their respective conference finals matchups.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing there. Probably should have put something down there, but yeah, I mean, so starting with the East, Miami getting off to that quick start, win the first two games, both pretty close. In the big block by Bam Adebayo in the series opener to clinch the Game 1 victory. Boston fought back. They had Gordon Hayward come back in Game 3 before Miami responded in Game 4 and eventually put them away in Game 6. And I think a big part of Miami's victory was the emergence of Tyler Hero, as we saw. This is a guy that was a rookie sharpshooter at Kentucky, and he's kind of evolved more than just that three-point outside threat throughout the season. I know we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum, but you see him in pick-and-roll situations, the way he's able to create for a big man, get the ball off handoffs and just pull up from beyond the arc. He's really showcased his own package, and the confidence this guy has been able to show in clutch situations is quite incredible. I believe his 37-point performance, it was the most by a player 20 years or younger in a postseason game besides Magic Johnson. So it kind of shows you how impressive, how impressive a performance that we're witnessing from Tyler Hero. And the zone, which has been a big part of Miami's defense the entire year, you didn't see it much in the first two rounds, but in this series against the Boston Celtics, they really used it effectively. And while the Celtics eventually started to pick it apart a little bit later on the series, it did its damage and really stifled Boston's outside shooting.
Did you think that the Heat winning that first game in overtime really set the tone for the series? Do you think that if Boston would have been able to come out with the 1-0 series lead, do you think that this series could have had a different complexion to it?
Yeah, it definitely could have went the other way for Miami if they were unable to get the victory there. Boston, I think, Gordon Hayward, he obviously came back in Game 3, but was nowhere close to being 100%, who probably played hurt, and just having him on the floor gave them at least another shooter, another playmaker. But overall, you weren't seeing the best of Gordon Hayward, but his return kind of gave them a little bit of momentum there in Game 3. But had Boston been able to come away with that win, I think there would have been less pressure on Hayward to kind of come back. There was that long break in between Game 2 and 3. I think it was like 3 or 4 days, and so I think if, let's say, they didn't rush Hayward back and they tried to kind of ease him back more in the lineup more, there would have been less pressure to bring him back sooner, and so it definitely could have went things the other way for Miami if they were unable to come up with a victory.
Yeah, I mean the 4-day break in between game 3 and game 4 there, that really I think threw some people for a loop as well. You picked the Miami Heat in 7 games. They end up winning it in 6. Do you think that if this game would have went to the Game 7, just the way that Boston had been fighting back in the series, do you think that they probably would have had the momentum to possibly take down that Game 7 and come back from the 3-1 deficit that they put themselves in?
It's possible. I still stand by my pick, and I think Miami still would have prevailed, whether it was 5, 6, or 7. I still thought they still would have put away Boston. Like I said, you weren't really seeing the best of Gordon Hayward, so really, they didn't really have much going for them off the bench. Kemba Walker had his struggles in the series. Was constantly picked on the defensive end. And Jason Tatum, for as bright as a star as he is, he had some struggles as well. I believe he started the one game, I think it was Game 5, he started 0 for 8 before he did kind of pick it up in the second half. And you saw the same struggles for him in Game 6. And so the Heat's zone defense really put the Boston Celtics in for a loop, and they didn't shoot the ball as effectively as they did in the previous round against the Toronto Raptors. And I think that's a testament to the zone defense that they threw at them.
And where do you think the Boston Celtics go from here, Chicco? I mean, obviously losing in the Eastern Conference Final, it's heartbreaking, but do you think that they're going to take more positives than negatives from this? Do you think that they're going to be bringing back most of the same core, Brad Stevens at head coach as well? Do you think that this team's just going to, tie their shoes up and go back at it again next year to try to take down those what look like to be a very good Brooklyn Nets team next year with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant? Do you think that the Celtics team is going to be a contender once again in the East?
Yeah, the Celtics will be right there, right near the top. Obviously, like you said, Dave, they're bringing back Jaylen Brown next year. I believe Jason Tatum is eligible for extension. I have no doubt that they'll get that done and lock him up. Kemba is locked in long term. I don't know what they'll be able to do in free agency. Gordon Hayward has a player option, which I think he'll likely exercise pretty hefty amount, and I don't think he's going to say no to that. And they do have some draft picks, though, in this year's draft, which would be interesting. They have 3, I believe, in the first round. And I'm sure they wouldn't want to use all 3 to plug up roster spots. It just would be a lot of rookies on the team, and, they wouldn't really have a role for some of them. So I could see the Celtics going for a draft and stash player, or, they'll keep the one guy overseas instead of bringing them over so that their contract doesn't start. And potentially even maybe looking at trading those picks for another piece to their puzzle, and maybe using Hayward's contract to match salaries. So all sorts of possibilities that Boston could do, but the future still is very bright for the Celtics. despite losing in the conference finals for the second time in 3 years.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a very solid showing from Brad Stevens' squad there. So the Heat were able to take down the Celtics in 6 games. Moving over to the Western Conference side of it, Chico, this part of the segment's brought to you by Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider, best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, built from right here in the Niagara region. Order today at customppe.ca. Use the code armchair at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Again, customppe.ca. So when we had you on for the last show previewing the conference finals, we didn't actually have a full Western Conference final yet because the day of recording that episode we were awaiting the Game 7 between the Clippers and the Nuggets, so we didn't have an opponent for the Lakers for you to discuss, but you did pick both matchups against the Lakers. You said that the Lakers would win in 6 against the Clippers, and you also said that they would win in 5 against the Denver Nuggets. Well, the Nuggets ended up winning the Game 7 against the Clippers, which we discussed in the first segment, how disappointing that was for the Clippers. And your prediction came to fruition once again, Chico. You picked the Lakers in 5 against the Nuggets, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think the series is a lot closer than the 4-1 series win indicates. The Nuggets could have easily won Game 2 if it wasn't for the heroics of Anthony Davis and hat buzzer beater and just the colossal defensive miscue from Mason Plumlee. But yeah, like I said, I was concerned for the Nuggets in terms of whether they'd have enough in the tank physically and mentally, and you kind of saw that war on some of these players, specifically Jamal Murray, as the series went on. He was pretty banged up in that final game in Game 5, and he had a knee contusion. He already had a hip injury he suffered at some point when they arrived in the bubble. So he's been pretty banged up the entire way, and you could see it visibly that he was physically laboring. And he still had one heck of a series and his share of highlight-worthy moments. But at the end of the day, with the Lakers, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, two of the best players in the league. They might not have a reliable third option every night, but they have had different role players step up throughout this postseason run, which has made it impressive considering how top-heavy the Lakers are.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody expected the Lakers to come out on top of the series. Obviously, it wasn't the series everybody wanted. Obviously, they wanted the Clippers and Lakers matchup, but the way that the Nuggets were able to come back in that series and build off the momentum that they had against the Clippers, maybe some people had expected them to put up a little bit more of a fight. Like you mentioned, Game 2 was a 105-103 game, so obviously decided by only 2 points there. But was there any doubt in your mind that the Lakers weren't going to take care of business at any point during the series?
I don't think there was any doubt. I just think the Nuggets are a great team. I just think they were just physically and mentally pretty worn out from the 7-game series, and not only going 7 games, but having to come back from a 3-1 deficit in both of those series and constantly fighting for your playoff lives. I think that really takes its toll on the team, and that definitely showed in the series. But I mean, to their credit, they were in pretty much most of the games in this series, and the clinching game, LeBron had his moments of brilliance, stepping up, taking the jump shots, and nailing them when it mattered most. The previous game before that, Jamal Murray's having one heck of a game, and LeBron had to take it onto himself to shut down Murray for the final 6 minutes or so of that contest, and so. Yeah, I mean, the Lakers did win that pretty handily. If you look at the series, 4 games to 1, but Denver made them work as hard as they could, and some moments of brilliance, like I said. LeBron's heroics in Game 5 in the clincher, Anthony Davis hitting that 3-pointer at the buzzer. I mean, that doesn't happen. You could easily put a couple more games on to the Nuggets, and it could be a 2-2 series.
And where do you think, just like we talked about the Boston Celtics on the east side, the west side here with the Denver Nuggets, just what do you think that where they're going to go going forward here. Obviously, they had the heroics that they've had in the playoffs this year was pretty incredible, coming back twice in those series. Just what do you think that we're going to see from this Nuggets team going forward? Do you think that they're going to bring most of their roster back? Do you think that they're going to be contending once again in the West? Where do you think the Denver Nuggets go from here, and do you think that they consider this a successful season, losing in the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, I think they have to be thrilled. I mean, they've never advanced to an NBA Finals, so this is as far as they've been there in their franchise history, and I think it was 2009, the last time they made to a conference finals, back when Melo was actually with the team. So it's been quite some time since the team has actually advanced that far in the postseason. And just like the Celtics, I think the future is very right there in the Mile High City. You have Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Those are key pieces. They're both locked up. Jeremy Grant is going to be a free agent, and he had a fantastic run for them defensively and both offensively as well, with his ability to shoot the ball and keep defensive honest. And as well, you have Michael Porter Jr. He showed up big time in the bubble for them. He was named to the All-Bubble second team and showed off his offensive skill set. Now, there's going to be some improvements he's going to have to make on the defensive end, because teams certainly, just like with Kemba Walker on the Celtics, teams definitely made a point to pick on Michael Porter as much as they could on the defensive end. But I think the future is very bright for the Nuggets when you consider Jokic, Murray, and Porter, potentially being a big three going forward for the next 3 years or so at least.
Mm-hmm. So the Denver Nuggets and the Boston Celtics both bowing out in the Western and Eastern Conference Finals, setting up this big matchup between the LA Lakers and the Miami Heat for the NBA Finals, and this shortened season with the pandemic and everything going on. It's definitely an interesting season with this Finals coming up. Two obviously big time teams there with the Heat and the Lakers. Obviously a lot of ties with Pat Riley and LeBron James on both sides of the equation there. So I'm really excited to get into that, and we're going to do that in the last segment of today's show after this commercial break. So we'll be right back here on the Ballin' in the Six podcast to preview the NBA Finals, and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Alright guys, welcome back to the final segment of our Ballin in the Six podcast, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Cappy and Chicco Nacion from the Scores Basketball Division back with you here, and we're going to preview the the NBA Finals with Chicco here, which is the title of today's episode, so really fired up to get going with this. And this segment today is brought to you by the Spicy Olive Bar and Grill. Family owned and operated since 2003, serving authentic and unique Italian-style food, along with drinks and live music to make a great dining experience, just off the historic Clifton Hill in Niagara Falls. This month's promo code is ArmchairPenne for 10% off your entire order when you call ahead for takeout or when you dine in. Let your server know. 905-371-2323 or spicyolivebarandgrill.com to book your reservation today. And we're back to talk about the NBA Finals matchup between the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers, and we also got to talk about how they got here, Chicco. First off, on the Miami Heat side of it, with a 4-0 sweep over the Indiana Pacers and a 4-5 matchup in the first round. Then they took down the Milwaukee Bucks, the number one seed overall in the NBA, going into the NBA playoffs with the Greek Freak Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, he was injured in the series, which led to Miami winning that series 4-1, kind of shocking the Bucks with that one, and then going on to beat the Boston Celtics 4-2 in the Eastern Conference Final. Just what have you thought of the Miami Heat's path, unexpected path here to the NBA Finals on the Eastern side of it?
Yeah, they had to beat some really good teams along the way. In Indiana, if they had Domantas Sabonis with them, it could have been a pretty different series. He was an all-star this year, averaged about 20 and 10 for them basically, and it was still a pretty good team that they were fielding out there despite not having Sabonis with them. And so it was pretty impressive for Miami to come out there, be focused right from the get-go, and come away with a 4-0 sweep. Move on to the next round, beat the league-leading Bucks, who have probably had a season in which they actually produced one of the best defensive performances of all time. So to be able to beat a team that was so sound defensively was impressive for them. And obviously they have the reigning MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I've been telling you this for quite some time that the Heat were built to beat the Bucks. They had a bunch of perimeter wing defenders that could size up and go up against Giannis and kind of wear him down. And they also had the three-point shooting to beat them. Milwaukee's defense is really focused on protecting the paint and forcing teams to beat them with their outside shooting. And I believe Miami ended the year as a top three-point shooting team. So, it just kind of played right into their hands. And sometimes with the playoffs, it's all about matchups. And that one just happened to be the wrong one for the Bucks. Then moving on to the conference finals, like was touched on earlier, we saw Tyler Hero's emergence in that one game. Bam Adebayo had a fantastic series and had that block to seal game one. And, of course, you also have Jimmy Butler, who's been the alpha dog for this team. And I think Goran Dragic's performances has been fantastic as well. Kendrick Nunn has been pretty ineffective since the restart. He's obviously had a pretty good rookie season and was runner-up in Rookie of the Year voting. But when he wasn't producing or providing anything on the floor, Eric Spoelstra went to the veteran Dragic, and he's just been a brilliant source of offense and kind of running the show for the Heat. So it's been an impressive run so far for this team, and it's going to hopefully be a good championship series against the Lakers.
And over on the Western Conference side, first this segment's brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Center, helping job seekers find work with their free services and counseling professionals. 6100 Throwstone Road, Niagara Falls, across from the Camisos Plaza. Book your appointment today at 905-358-0021 or ehc.on.ca. We have the Los Angeles Lakers, obviously the 1-8 matchup against the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers actually winning the first game of that matchup, kind of shocking the Lakers a little bit, but the Lakers were able to pull that one back attack, win it 4-1, going on to play a very solid Houston Rockets team and winning that one 4-1, which I think surprised some people that figured that the Rockets would put up a little bit better of a fight than that. So the Lakers have basically won their way through the Western Conference side of the playoffs here on a 4-1 basis. So they went 4-1 against Portland, 4-1 against Houston, and 4-1 against Denver in the Western Conference Finals here. So what have you thought of the Los Angeles Lakers? Looks like dominance so far from the Western Conference side, and is LeBron James on a mission here?
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I mean, it's been impressive the fact that they've been able to just steamroll throughout the entire conference, drop 3 games only, and I think their third best scorer is Kyle Kuzma, and I think he's barely averaging 10 points a game. So to put that in perspective, it's pretty much been, like I said earlier, a top-heavy attack starting with James and Davis, and the fact that they've been able to do this and not really have a reliable third option has been really impressive. But it's not to say that they haven't had that third guy step up. I mean, it could be anyone on any given night. Dwight Howard had a really high-impact series against the Nuggets, really baiting Nikola Jokic into foul trouble and using his physical presence both on the glass and scoring offensively as well. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, while he's gotten a lot of flack over the years, he's done a pretty good job in that starting lineup in the absence of Avery Bradley, and he's shooting more than 40% from downtown during the postseason, and I don't think you really ask for much more than that. He's definitely filling his role, and I think you also have to mention Rajon Rondo, the veteran guard, otherwise known as Playoff Rondo during the postseason, because he just seems to just bring it every year, year in, year out in the playoffs. I mean, this was a guy who just looked okay during the regular season, and for whatever reason, he just finds another gear in the playoffs, and he's had a great run so far, and he's climbing up the leaderboard and playoff records, and he's passed quite a bunch of names during this playoff run and on the all-time assist list in the playoffs, including the late Kobe Bryant and Scottie Pippen. So it's been a nice team effort for the Lakers so far. Just the unpredictability of who that third guy is, it's quite incredible that they've still been able to be this successful.
I think there were a lot of question marks going into the season with the Lakers. Were they going to be able to be, a whole unit? Obviously, you have some great players like Anthony Davis and LeBron James, but was it all going to click together as a unit and as a team? And so far in the playoffs and the return to the bubble, it didn't start off too well. Obviously with the loss to Portland, but they were able to pull it back together here and really showing why that they're the favorites going into this NBA Finals. And with that being said, let's talk about this matchup here now with the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. Going into tonight's game, the Lakers are favored by 4.5 points, and the over-under for this game is actually 218. So what are your thoughts on the game tonight, Chicco? And in general, what are your thoughts on the series itself? And do you think that this is going to be a very successful NBA Finals for the ratings' sake for the NBA to kind of try to recoup some of the money that they have lost and paid for this bubble?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good competitive series between the two teams. I think you can't deny that the Los Angeles Lakers are definitely the favorites heading into this, but I do think there are ways in which Miami could trouble the Lakers and make it a series or potentially even pull off an upset. First and foremost, the matchup with Bam Adebayo and Anthony Davis is really going to be at the forefront. Anthony Davis is going to be facing a pretty good offensive, versatile player in Adebayo, who's also, he's got the strength and quickness to match up with him defensively, although he is a bit undersized. So that's going to be a huge, one of the bigger matchups in this series is seeing can Miami guard Anthony Davis one-on-one. They probably won't, but they'll probably try to throw a couple of double teams, try to get the ball out of his hands, and make it really tough for Anthony Davis. That's going to be an interesting matchup to watch. And I think even from a Lakers defensive perspective, I think them missing Avery Bradley could show in this series when you have guys like Tyler Hero and Goran Dragic, two guards that can create their own offense and put some points on the board, and then you're missing your best perimeter defender in Avery Bradley. I think that's possibly a problem that could occur for the Lakers in this series. And the Lakers aren't a great 3-point shooting team, although they do have some great 3-point shooters. And I think if Miami can mix in that zone defense, really throw off the rhythm, give them that curveball, and kind of make the Lakers kind of put that seed in their head, I think that could be a very interesting development in this series. Obviously, Miami, they've used that as their bread and butter throughout the whole season. Had a lot of success against the Celtics perimeter shooters, and the Lakers aren't as great as a 3-point shooting team as the Boston Celtics, and so it'll be interesting to see how they tackle that zone and see if they use any of the stuff that Boston used to break the zone. And in the past, I mean, LeBron's first year when he was in Miami, he did have trouble against a zone that was brought by the Dallas Mavericks and orchestrated by Dwayne Casey. That probably remains the lowest point in his postseason career. So obviously LeBron is a much better shooter now. He has a great post game that has kind of developed as a result of that disappointment in 2011 against the Mavs. But let's not forget, Eric Spoelstra was his coach for 4 years in Miami. And I'm sure he definitely has a couple of things up his sleeve that he's going to try to use against LeBron James in the series.
And you segue into my next point here, which was the LeBron James familiarity factor with the Miami Heat. Just do you think that there's a little bit extra on both sides? Obviously, LeBron spending a lot of years in Miami and winning a championship with the Miami Heat. Do you think that this is going to be do you think this series has a little bit more to it? If, for instance, it would have been Lakers and Celtics, obviously that's a historic matchup in the NBA. But as far as LeBron James goes, do you think that him playing the Miami Heat is going to mean a little bit more to him than going up against the Boston Celtics, just for the fact that he was a Miami Heat player, obviously, and winning multiple championships with the Miami Heat? Do you think that that plays into both sides, having a little bit extra emotion adding to this series?
I think there are a lot of layers to this, but I don't think any of them will publicly come out and say it. During his media availability yesterday, LeBron actually kind of spoke about the opposite of how much respect he has for Pat Riley and for Coach Spoelstra. It was a messy ending to his ending in South Beach. He and Pat Riley weren't exactly on the best terms when he decided to go back to Cleveland. Again, LeBron stated that yesterday that, there's no hard feelings, but I'm sure deep down inside, both sides would like to get the victory and have a little bit something to prove for sure. I think Eric Spoelstra has kind of been really undervalued as a head coach in this league. I mean, this is a guy who is top 10 in wins and playoff wins all time in this league for a head coach. Obviously, he got a lot of those wins during his 4 years during the Heatles era, coaching LeBron James in the Big Three. But, I mean, as we've seen in the past, it's not easy to really manage these egos and superstars. David Blatt had LeBron James for that 1 year, and he wasn't able to do the job. And they brought in Tyronn Lue, and Tyronn Lue was able to bring him a championship. We've seen teams like the Los Angeles Lakers with Dwight Howard and Kobe and Steve Nash that 1 year, and Mike Brown, as much as success he's had during the regular season, was unable to kind of replicate that same success with that star power with the Lakers. So I think for sure a guy like Eric Spoelstra is going to want to kind of prove that, it wasn't just LeBron all those years ago. I mean, he's got to be given his credit for the job that he did coaching the team. Pat Riley, I mean, he used to coach for the LA Lakers. He's got ties going back there long, long, long ago. So I'm sure he would like to have his win over his former team. And so there's a lot both on the line for both sides. And I think, yeah, like you said, there is something that is bigger than just, winning the finals. It's winning the finals against the people you're going up against. That's going to be a big deal for both sides.
Mm-hmm. And before I ask you your prediction for the series, is there a player or two that you think could become an X factor in the series for the success of both teams if they're to win the championship? Do you think that they're, maybe a player that's kind of flying under the radar, or somebody coming off the bench that you think could really make a difference in this series and flip the scales either way?
On the Lakers side, I'd have to say it's Danny Green. He hasn't had a great postseason, but we all know against the Miami Heat what he did when he was with the Spurs. I believe he tied a record for most three-pointers in a final series. So this is a guy who is a pretty solid defender. He's definitely lost a little bit of a step this year, but he's still pretty good of a defender. And so I think he's going to be tasked with a lot of the defensive duties on possibly Goran Dragic or Tyler Hero. And again, he was a great three-point shooter last year. He set a career best with the Toronto Raptors, and he shot more than 40%. And so this guy is a streaky shooter. He hasn't had the best postseason, but I mean, gets a couple of shots to go down, and shooters just get that confidence and they get locked in that zone. And especially in a series like this, that can make all the difference. In terms of the Miami Heat, I don't know if I would say he's an X factor, but I think Jay Crowder is going to be a huge part in this series, not only on his defense on LeBron James. I'm sure he's going to be splitting some duties with Andre Iguodala in terms of guarding him, but not only for his defensive job, but see if he can find his three-point stroke. He had a really good series against the Bucks and pretty much shot the lights out, but against the Boston Celtics, he just kind of lost his shot. So I think those are two guys on both ends you could see having massive implications on the ultimate outcome of this.
And obviously, looking at the matchup here through the betting lines, I mean, the Lakers are 6-3 against the spread in the last 10 games. The Miami Heat are 7-3 against the spread in the last 10 games. The Lakers versus Heat money line, according to CBS.com, the Lakers at -185 and the Heat at a +165. So obviously the Lakers are favored here, Chicco, pretty heavily by a lot of people. You say that it's going to be more of a competitive series than most people think. You also said that the Heat would beat the Bucks, which they ended up doing. So you've been pretty right so far through this bubble playoff that we've gotten here, with a lot of right predictions with your West Final picks, with how many games the Lakers would win in. So go ahead and make the big splash that everybody's been waiting to hear for the full episode. What is your prediction, Lakers versus Heat? Who wins and in how many games?
I think the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be taking this in 7 games.
Wow.
I have too much respect for the Miami Heat for them to roll over. Like I said, I think they're going to give the Lakers troubles in terms of their three-point shooting and using their zone defense against the Lakers. I think that's going to really cause them some problems. But at the end of the day, the two best players on the floor are still going to be LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and it's tough because I think you can go through every other player on both sides and say the Heat have probably the next best players from like 3 to 8. But in terms of 1 to 2, Anthony Davis and LeBron James are the two best players in the series, and they do have the individual advantage on a 1-on-1 matchup. But it's not to say that the Heat can make this a series and certainly threaten for them. But combine that and the fact that the Lakers kind of feel like this team of destiny right now. And, they're playing some inspired basketball. Let's not forget about that. The death of Kobe Bryant had a huge impact on the basketball world and this franchise, and his memory will forever live on. And in these players, they go to work each day, and that's definitely been a focal point during this run. Frank Vogel has talked about it in Team Huddle. I think say Mamba on 3 every time they break out of the huddle. So they certainly know that a lot more is at stakes besides just winning a championship.
Yeah, and that would definitely be a huge moment for the Los Angeles Lakers, winning the NBA championship in the year that Kobe Bryant left us here. So that would obviously, they're playing with heavy hearts as well. So they're definitely motivated, and LeBron James wants to put himself, as one of those Laker greats by being able to bring this franchise back from the depths of the basement for a pretty long time here and win another championship for the Lakers and do it in Kobe Bryant's honor as well. So the Lakers are entering the finals, averaging 113.9 points. But the Heat are also hot. They've won 12 out of their 15 games, out 12 of their last 15 games. So, it's going to be a very impressive matchup here, Chicco. And, it is going to be a good series, I think. I'm going to have to go with you that the Lakers do win this game. As you all know, I am a Miami Heat fan, and I'm very pleased at the progression and where they've come from this year compared to a few years ago with what the roster was looking like and where the team was heading. So for me, making it to the NBA Finals, I think is an accomplishment. Obviously, you'd want to see your team win the NBA Finals, but it's going to be very tough to beat this LA Lakers team, and LeBron just seems like he's been on a mission here, Chicco. Just any closing thoughts that you want to mention on today's show before we wrap it up, just about this NBA Finals and kind of just how the NBA has been able to get through this entire bubble without really any major issues? And do you think that when this is all said and done, when the series is over and we crown a champion, do you think that the NBA will call this a success?
Yeah, and hopefully it stays that way throughout the championship series. Hopefully that nobody else tests. I mean, so far there has been 0 tests, knock on wood, but let's hope it, that this doesn't affect the series if someone were to test positive for the coronavirus. And I mean, it's going to be a heck of an accomplishment for whoever comes out of this. I mean, it's an accomplishment in itself to make the finals. Dealing with being away from your loved ones for that long, being in isolation, it's definitely taken its toll on the players, both physically and mentally. And so when you're thinking about basketball, basically almost 24/7 there, and you kind of don't have that escape into the outside world from this, I mean, it can get pretty tough on the players and the staff there. And, we've seen that so far through comments made from players and coaches during the time in the bubble. And so I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be quite the crowning achievement for whoever comes out on top. And I expect it to be a really good series. And like I said, there's so many layers and storylines to this that, it's going to be awesome to see that all play out.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And final thoughts, Chicco. Give us the finals MVP.
I think it's going to be Anthony Davis.
Okay.
He I think a big deal for him was having that playoff moment that he had against the Nuggets when he had that buzzer beater. And I think that was a big step for him going forward as, the future, I guess you could say, heir to LeBron James whenever he does step away. Now, the Lakers still have to re-sign him this offseason as he is expected to opt out and become a free agent, but it is expected that he'll be staying in Los Angeles for the long term. But I think what we've seen for Anthony Davis throughout the playoffs, I mean, that Denver series, he was pretty much unguardable. He's such a tough matchup with his ability to score on the perimeter and now even step back and shoot 3-pointers. And so we're really seeing a true evolution in Anthony Davis's game and seeing him grow as that leader and number one option on a playoff team. And let's not forget, he only won one playoff series. I think they only made playoffs twice during his time in New Orleans, and they won one playoff series. So for him to kind of do this, and obviously it helps having a guy like LeBron James, but for him to kind of perform well and so far not show any nerves, has been quite impressive. And I think LeBron James is okay kind of taking that backseat to him if it means adding another title to his resume.
Absolutely, and you bring up a good point there about the Pelicans, and it seems like that trade's going to work out well for the Lakers if they do win this title. I think it would be worth, all the pieces and assets that they had to give up to the Pelicans in that trade. So if the Lakers do end up coming away with it, it'll be great for Anthony Davis, coming over from the Pelicans, and obviously just for the whole fan base in general with the mourning that they've had of Kobe Bryant. It would just be obviously a storybook ending to a pretty horrific start of the season for Lakers Nation. But with that being said, that's going to wrap it up for our NBA Finals preview right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network and on the Ballin in the Six podcast. Your source of North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Ballin in the Six podcast, Cappy. You can follow me on Twitter at Capoots13 with a Canadian Z, and you can follow my co-host at Chicco_N. Again, Chicco, thanks so much for taking the time to come on here. It's a busy time for the NBA, and I know you got a lot going on again at thescore.com. He's an contributing writer for that website. Make sure you're going and checking out his articles. Great stuff there by Chicco. I know he's got some good stuff coming up as well for the draft as well, coming up for the NBA when the finals do wrap up. So Chicco, thanks so much for taking the time to come on and discuss the NBA Finals preview with us.
Anytime, man. Always a pleasure.
Big thank you to all of our great sponsors. Swell Put Us On, Sport the Network. Keep the show on the air. Make sure you're checking them out and telling them that the Armchair GM sent you. Finally, to you viewers out there for tuning in and listening along for this episode. And once again, this has been the Ballin in the Six podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans, for sports fans. Enjoy the NBA Finals. We'll see you guys next time.